Okay, so this is the first in my new series of videos for OET Write Now. So what I'm going to be doing, I'm going to be posting a certain case notes. I'm not sure it's going to be once a week or however often it's going to be. It depends when I have the time. These case notes for today are Mr. Barry Jones from OET Official. So, disclaimer, allowance is made for fair use, such as teaching purposes. Okay, so don't be complaining that I've used your material because it comes under fair use. So these are official from the OET, Mr. Barry Jones. Here we go. So, now, what's the strategy for writing a letter? I'll just say a little about that first, and then we'll take a look at the two letters which I was sent. I was hoping I would have more, and I'll be having live sessions probably next week with a Q&A. I've been a bit sick, so I haven't been speaking much, and you maybe can tell my voice is not as good as it is, well, as it ought to be. But anyway, we will see. So, first things first, right, go to the task. You've got two things to consider, audience and purpose. So, audience, who are you writing to? Okay. And what is it you want them to do? Now, why is this important? Well, the audience is important because that will tell you what you need to include in your notes, the content part, and what you do not and must not include, the conciseness and clarity part. It will also tell you what language, technical jargon, blah, 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 you can use for the recipient. Okay, and the purpose. Why are you writing? Why am I reading this? So audience and purpose, that's what you've got to think about first. Then you go through the notes and you have to assess everything that you need, tick, 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 everything that you don't need, cross, 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 cross. And what you're doing, essentially, you're constructing a narrative. You're telling me a story. Okay, I want you to do this. The reason why I want you to do it is, and you can have a chronology, a history paragraph first, maybe it's urgent, that should come first. Every task is different. Okay, but so audience and purpose. Now we'll take a look at the official example a bit later on. Okay, so you can see how that works. Now we've got a couple of letters here. I've already had a quick look through, made a couple of comments, and I'll explain those here. So I would rework that introduction because here it said, thank you for seeing Mr. Jones, 46-year-old forklift driver who's a forklift driver in a warehouse I'm writing to, okay? So to make this easier and tidier, I'm writing to request your workplace assessment of Mr. Jones, a 46-year-old forklift driver. You don't need to mention the warehouse part. You can mention that. You can expand on that in the body of a letter. So I'm writing to request your workplace assessment of Mr. Jones, 46-year-old forklift driver who is recovering from severe lower back strain and now wants to return to work. So that's the purpose. Okay, so that is clear, immediately apparent. Now, if you look at some of the key words here, quick, precise, okay, easily, immediately identifiable, quickly, efficiently. So, if you want to do this thank you for like seeing blah, 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 okay, you can do, but it's much simpler to get to the point, okay? I'm writing to request your workplace assessment of Mr. Jones because blah, blah, blah. That's good. Now, I've highlighted these connectors. Now, OET is clear, and I think I posted the appropriate links to the blog in the group OET Write Now on Telegram. They say if you can take a connector out and it doesn't change the meaning of the sentence, you should do so. You don't need them at all. So, initially, Mr. Jones presented or complained. I would always do that. Mr. Jones presented complaining of severe backache after injuring his back at work. You can mention lifting stuff, but it doesn't actually matter how. The important fact is he hurt his back at work. He was x-rayed, which was normal, and he was commenced on naproxen and crysoprodol. So you don't have to say medications such as. In addition, it's physio. Now, he doesn't say anything about he was advised. It simply says in the case notes that he was given a certificate for time off. That's all it says. Let's have a look. That's it. It didn't say anything about advised. He was simply given a sick note for 30 days. Okay, and that's it. All right. So, till the time of recovery of his condition, well, it doesn't say that. It just says he was given a sick note for 30 days. So now, fortunately, we don't really need that. That's judgmental kind of language. It's not really medical. Don't really need it. So simply, after 3 months of regular physio and exercise, recovering well, increased range of movements. Now, I moved this sentence down here, and I'll explain why. So you've got the symptoms first. So, okay, after 3 months, recovering, is a bit stiff. Now, we don't need this. It is noteworthy. It is worthy to mention. It is worthy to note. Don't include that. No proper example letter includes that kind of a phrase. Don't need it. Simply, muffly. Also, he's feeling tired, but we don't need these. Okay? Now, I moved this here because you've got the symptoms first, and then he's restless and he wants to return back to work. However, he can't do that. Now, this is where this paragraph doesn't really fill in the story. Now, the sample, which we'll see in a bit, specifically says, okay, so he's had all these different sessions, and this has happened, he's a bit stiff, he's so tired, but he wants to go back to work. In view of this, I'm not happy about him going back, but he can go back, provided that he doesn't lift and he takes a break. So can you therefore assess the workplace and advise him or me on his duties? Okay, so that's not really telling the complete story there. It's not filling in the gaps in a narrative. Okay, so I would move that sentence, put it down there. Now it's a bit more logical. He's restless and wants to return to work. However, due to his condition, I don't want him to because blah, 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 blah. Okay, so that's how that paragraph would work a little better. And the closing is good. Okay, so just watch that purpose, make it clearer. Okay, more immediate. We don't need these. Consequently, it's worth mentioning blah, blah, blah. We don't need those. And when I show you the sample, you will see they don't have any of those. And you need to properly fill in the story, which you don't really do there. Okay? So let's have a look at the second one. Mr. Jones now. I highlighted these phrases because they're very similar to the case notes. Very similar. Now, I saw a letter a few days back, and the guy, it was posted in the group on Telegram, OET Write Now, link in the description. And he basically lifted some phrases from the case notes, very similar. And you don't want to do that. You've got to paraphrase. It's an English test. You've got to show that you can paraphrase. So try to avoid that. Okay, so I'm writing to refer Mr. Jones. Well, you're not really, you are writing to request workplace assessments, okay, but still, that purpose is good. You could have put something like, usually you put the age and occupation, 46-year-old forklift driver, so that's there, and then, but you've kind of got it, like here, a forklift driver, which, who requires prolonged, and it doesn't really require, well, whose job requires prolonged sitting and occasional heavy lifting, and we don't need an article there. Okay. So on the 31st, Mr. Jones presented with strain in his back after lifting a heavy weight at work, not 4 days. He wasn't lifting a weight for 4 days, it happened 4 days ago. So his pain was worsening, I'm not sure why we use past, continuous there. His x-ray revealed no discs, which established the diagnosis of severe back sprain. Subsequently, you can use that one because it means following after. He was prescribed, referred to a physiotherapist because it's countable, advised. We don't need that. He was given a certificate, 30 days off work. After a month, his back was still sore, he was moving, he was compliant. So that's not too bad. That's kind of a list of sentences as well. You could join those up. But though still, Mr. Jones recovering well, back still causing him pain, making him tired. Blah, blah, now he said this time for another 30 days. Now, today Mr. Jones' condition has improved his pain and he wanted to return to work. So this is where, like in the previous one, you should have said about, because of what his job entails, because of his duties, I'm not very happy, but he's getting bored, he wants to go back to work. So I've said he can go back as long as his workplace is assessed and he can do this and that and he doesn't have to lift anything, So that's what that paragraph needs to fill the story. And then this, too short. I would appreciate your assessment of Mr. Jones's workplace and advise him on what he can do, blah, blah, blah. So that needs to be filled out and that needs to be filled out as well. So let's take a look. This is just a random one from the official notes. It could be written a little better, but this would do the job. So your purpose, immediate. Okay. Now, I wouldn't do that above patient, workplace assessment. I would just do workplace assessment for Mr. Jones, a 46-year-old forklift driver. But, okay, those two sentences work. Okay. So this is a little sparse. Again, these examples are not perfect, but, they will do. So I would have filled this out a little bit more details, okay? Now this paragraph's good because this fills in the story. So he's recovering, eager to get back to work because he's bored, but he still gets a bit of trouble. So, bearing in mind the nature of his job, I'm not so happy of him going back, but if you say he can, if you assess him and say he can go back, if he can do, X, Y, Z, he can return. So, the closing, again, spelled out a little bit more. Okay. So, that's why that would work well, because this is constructing the narrative. It's telling me the story. So, I want you to do this, and this is a story telling you why. So, in view of what I've just said, can you do X, Y, Z? And that would work fine. Okay? And you notice they don't have any of these connectors. Don't have these. If you don't need it, if your sentence works without it, don't include them. So, I'll just put these on the screen. I'll just leave that there so you can take a screenshot of that. The two authors know whose letters these are, so I just leave that there for you, and I'll put the second one and leave it there for you to take a screenshot as well. Okay, not too bad. I hope that helps. So, again, what do? Go to the task first, audience and purpose, then go through the notes. Put yourself in the shoes of the reader. If I were the reader of this, what must I know? What must I know? What don't I know? What don't I need? Okay, and then you've got to transform your case notes into grammatically complete sentences. Don't lift anything. No copy and paste. Don't simply lift chunks of language, because that's not the point of the exercise. And then construct that narrative. Tell me that story. Okay? What do you want me to do? Why do you want me to do it? And that's it. Okay, hope that helps.